It's After Dark. We got a great crew for you tonight to break everything down. We got Sean Miller, Archie Miller, Robbie Hummel. We got a hell of a game right now. Duke is up 75-73 with a little over 2 minutes to go. And this game, guys, has been as good as advertised. I mean, the first couple Big Zags games were absolute train wrecks. But this one has been terrific and kind of good to see, because I think we needed this. You know, over here on the East Coast, we're staying up till 10:30. We needed something to kind of get us going. So, Sean, what has kind of stood out to you the most with this game so far? Kind of going back and forth. Paolo was sensational in the first half, but honestly, you know, Gonzaga had to be pretty fortunate, Mark Few, going into the break only down 3.
Yeah, for sure. What stands out for me, Jeff, is, you know, when you look at Chet Holmgren, it's easy to see his offense. I think you really have to look at that as much about his defense as his offense. I mean, what a difference it is for Duke scoring in the second half versus the first half. Him getting 2 quick fouls and missing the time that he did really impacted this game. And obviously, Paolo, his just individual performance in the first half, I mean, if there aren't a lot of players that are going to play better in a college basketball game of this magnitude than he did in that first 20 minutes. And I think that, you know, the last part is it also shows Gonzaga's depth. Julian Strother, who a lot of people aren't talking about, like, I mean, he's sitting right now on 20 points and he's having an amazing game. There's a lot of different players on the Zags that can beat you. It's not just Chet. Obviously, we've talked about Timmy, but the collection of talent on Gonzaga's team is parallel to the guys in the white jerseys, and that doesn't often happen.
No, it's been a heavyweight fight. I mean, it really has. And Art, you're not surprised that Duke came in here and was ready to go. I mean, the crowd seems about 50-50, but I thought they did a great job early of making life difficult for both of Gonzaga's big two at the time, which were Drew Timme and Andrew Nembhard. Those are kind of the guys that I think you got to slow down, and they did early.
Yeah, you know, the thing about Duke is, as much hype is around this game, every time they play, it's like this, you know, and whether it's going to be at Ohio State next week, it's going to be the same game. Whether it was Kentucky in the Garden early, it's the same game. And, you know, I'd be hard pressed to figure that Coach K doesn't have a calm team sort of coming in here ready to go. But early in the game, you could tell that Duke's talent was different, that Gonzaga hadn't seen that type of size, athleticism, and talent. When they were converting early in the game off misses and turnovers, they were scoring right with them. They have the size to kind of deal with them in and around the basket. And they were really, really sticky early in the game in terms of being able to not let Gonzaga move the ball, reverse the ball. So no surprise from Duke. I mean, in general, this is kind of like Duke's bread and butter, these type of games. So they're right at home, in my opinion.
All right, let's just kind of watch the end of this game and break it down, Rob. As you're watching now, these final minutes, any of you guys can kind of weigh in as we watch Joey Baker foul there. Duke up 1, 1:11 left, all sorts of foul trouble. Rob, what have you seen down the stretch here?
I've just been so impressed with Duke's guards on both ends. They've lived in the paint. I mean, they get to the paint, and they've done a good job of spraying it out, finding guys, getting multiple penetrations. But then defensively, they look like the Duke teams that I played against. We've seen Duke go to like some 2-3 zone, some BS defense.
No question, Rob. You're right. You're right. I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
Screw you. We're more talented than you. We're more athletic than you. We are going to make your life miserable. We'll take you out of what you want to run. And I thought it kind of knocked Gonzaga back initially. Now they've found some rhythm and whatnot, but that really stood out to me. That has not been there the last couple of years.
We talked about this a couple of weeks back, Robbie.
Oh, what a play.
In 1-point game, but the combination of the two centers at Duke, it isn't just Williams, who in his own right is terrific, but the fact they can sub in John for him. I mean, you talk about defense. I mean, being able to protect the rim and really allow these guards to get up after you. I think they have a huge upside on defense for sure. Great drive.
Jeremy Roach, who has struggled all game and probably for me, the biggest question mark for Duke coming into the season.
Wow.
No, here's the thing though. Gonzaga, Duke right now is playing the side pick and roll game. Nobody's in the corner. So you have the dribbler and then you have the high screener. That the last drive wasn't this, but Gonzaga's played it two different ways and they really can't find a way. Like they've hard hedged and they've plugged. And Robbie made the point, Duke's guards, if you don't come out there and hedge, they're turning the bend and they're good enough to score and make plays. Not just one of them. Very few teams have 2 and 3 guys that can do that. If you hard hedge, the guy who rolls is a good player and there's just not one of them. There's multiple guys. So in its simplest form, their side pick and roll has really been problematic. And what I would tell you, no matter who Duke plays, that's what you're going to start with. How in God's name am I going to defend that? Gonzaga has really been hurt in tonight's game on that right there.
There's some guys out here that have gotten so much better. Wendell Moore, Julian Strother. I mean, guys that have played lesser roles, and all of a sudden, this is as bright as the lights get. And those guys have been phenomenal.
Yeah, I think
both
Wendell Moore
coaches have
reminds
to be
me.
happy with their teams. I mean, coming out of this, obviously you want to win the game, but to me, there's so many positives on both sides.
You see the play though, like Drew Timme doesn't miss that shot very often. Well, he didn't just miss an easy one. Mark Williams is just different. You just don't score on him like the rest of your schedule. And the fact that Duke doesn't have just Williams that they can sub in with John, if you think about it, Banchero never has to play the 5. So keep in mind how big and physical he is. So the size and the quickness of them, I think it allows them to be defensively how they used to be. And I would be surprised as you follow them the rest of the season if you don't see them become a top 5 defensive team. And usually if they're in the top 5 defensively, they're making a run at the national title.
Well, point being, Gonzaga has 17 turnovers tonight. Andrew Nembhard has 6, and Drew Timme has 5. Those guys don't play with those type of turnovers in a game, but 17 turnovers is a result of the talent and the athleticism that's out there.
Duke up 82-79 now with 18.8 left. Duke's ball. I think as much as anything, I think Wendell Moore's been the key. I mean, Paulo.
I was saying earlier to you guys, Jeff, that Wendell Moore, he's back in my time where Chris Carrawell, as a junior and senior at Duke, was the ACC Player of the Year. As a freshman and a sophomore, he was a role player on great teams. Wendell Moore, in this day and age, as he came in as a freshman, people look at him like he wasn't good enough, or he was a little bit doesn't have this, doesn't have that. And you're just seeing a natural progression of a good player at Duke kind of do what they always did. It's just a different time.
Takes a lot of pressure off.
And guess what? Drew Timme's a junior.
Yeah.
Like Drew Timmy's not a freshman. So Gonzaga,
I think this, to be honest with you, this may be one of the oldest years in recent memory. There's a lot of old players playing well. Good teams with old guys out there for a change.
There's Robbie Hummels all over college basketball.
Robbie was a super senior before there was ever a term.
That's his friend. What can I say? I made this possible for all these guys.
Let me ask you though, Robbie, I got to ask you this question. Each spring, I hope, because I coached against you when you were a freshman, you were a great freshman. I hope you sat there and said, Painter, I want to know what's going to be different in my role next year as a sophomore if I'm coming back to Purdue. And then after your sophomore year, I want to know what you said to him after your sophomore year. This is exactly what it needs to be for me to come back. Like, is that how it went all 4? Like, did you do that 3 times?
Me and my dad, we were really pissed about my role. I used to get to play. Like, I was literally like, I'm getting minutes on this team. Like, this is crazy. Like, no, we were not having that conversation.
Hunter Salas in the game now. They got both freshmen, Hickman, Salas. Timmy's off right now.
You know what I find remarkable watching this game? I go back to Kansas. I know they had a tough loss earlier today to Dayton. But if you really call it what it is, and you look at the talent level of Duke 1 through 10, the talent level of Gonzaga 1 through 10, I mean, not just who they've become in their respective programs, but who they were in high school, like what they were ranked coming in, like what type of prospects they are. I don't think there's any comparison. And I say that to Bill Self's credit. And I think, like, I don't see Dayton being able to beat Duke and Gonzaga on a neutral court right now. You know, it's just, it's kind of remarkable to look at the talent level of how Gonzaga's evolved to be where they're at.
Well, that's the thing. You look at it and you're like, honestly, there's equal talent. Now, I don't know if Mark View's ever going to have this again. That'll be the interesting thing.
Yeah, Nolan Hickman just came in the game, and I know he was in earlier for a brief minute, but he's one of the top 3 or 4 point guards in his high school class. So he's a McDonald's All-American. Was Hunter Salas a McDonald's All-American?
Yeah.
Top 10 player.
So I want you to think about their roles on this team.
Right.
And I think that says a lot. And we've already talked about Duke. And I think, Arch, your point on Wendell Moore is so well taken because, you know, he's not only highly coveted and a very good player, but, you know, he's no longer a freshman. He's not only there for 9 months, he's been around the block. And I think that makes Duke even better.
Think about this about Gonzaga. This is pretty crazy. In the late 90s, they were on the same trajectory as Valpo University. They're like 6,000 people, kids that go to school there. They go to the Sweet 16, and now they're this. And Valpo is the Beacons. But it's pretty amazing, right?
It's your fault. By the way, it's your fault. If you had gone to Valpo could have been Gonzaga. But instead, you
and Scott Martin just needed to walk across the street and everything would have been different.
Downtown. Hey, I cried when I called Homer Drew and told him I wasn't coming. I was devastated. I was heartbroken.
I'm sure he cried when you called him too. So what else was it? I mean, how much of a factor?
Yeah, this is a big point here. There's 17 seconds.
Yeah.
How quick Gonzaga can shoot and score is everything because the game's so far from over. But, you know, you look, they got the ball with 17. Great job. Look how slow it's been. Now 5 seconds. They got it down. They got it all that is 6 seconds. Back to our defensive comment about Duke. They shoot it with 4 seconds. You know what they usually do is they run it coast to coast and shoot a layup, right?
But Wendell Moore just turned him 3 times.
Yeah, so they cracked the ball full court at 17, and they turned 17 seconds into a desperation heave from the left wing. Most of the time, Gonzaga is going to get a quick score. It's Duke.
Did they go zone? Did they go zone?
I don't know. That's a good
I
question.
think they picked up full court.
Moore picked up the ball, but they might have fallen back into a 2-3.
I thought they fell back. 2-3, 2-possession game, right? What a difference 4 days makes in terms of the environment in that arena versus tonight. I mean, UCLA, the hype around that one, and then this one here. But like I said before, I said it a couple weeks ago, the most remarkable thing about Duke is the environments that they have to play in the stage that they're on. And like, this is probably going to be the very same thing whenever that is Tuesday night when they head into Columbus. It'll be the biggest crowd in Columbus.
That's such a good point.
The one thing I'll say to that is, like, a lot of these guys on Duke, think about it. They weren't very good last year. They didn't play in front of fans. It's not like they're used to it.
No, but they all went there for that reason.
I know, but this is like their first big one. This is their first big one,
What do you
and
mean?
they
They played
delivered.
the Champions Classic. It was like the best.
Yeah, Madison
Yeah,
Square
I
Garden
guess.
was a pretty big stage.
Yeah, that's true. That was but they haven't played a ton of them. Is what I'm saying.
I will say this though: we played them my sophomore year in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. We were both in the top 10. It was the best environment we maybe ever had in my time at Purdue, and it was overwhelming to us. And they handled it like this is every time we go. Like Archie said, this is not shit to us because everywhere we go, this is what we see, and it's just, you're right. They haven't seen it as much because of COVID last year, but these dudes, they're wired for this stuff.
Yeah, you know, and I think the one thing for the perspective of college basketball, and it's a great perspective for people out here in the West, both of these teams will be home. Duke has a further trip, but they'll be home in about 4.5, 5 hours. And Gonzaga will be home in about 3 hours. Like, they're not staying over. getting on the commercial flight, connecting and being home. Like in the world of college basketball in 2021, playing in games like this on neutral court, how you travel, different things, it separates programs. It allows programs to sustain great excellence. And I'll never forget, and Arch was with me, first year we're in Maui. I'm the head coach at Arizona, left to Xavier. And I always felt like Xavier at that time and Gonzaga were very similar. And Gonzaga won the Maui Invitational that first year. That would be like 13 years ago. And that was 13 years ago. And I asked one of their donors, because where we were staying, there was all these signs at the hotel directing the Zags following on where to go, where dinner, where lunch is. And they had a Thanksgiving dinner the next day, but they chartered from Spokane, Washington, direct to Maui. And I remember thinking, like, you want to know one reason why Gonzaga is the way they are? Because it's really important. They've invested. And those guys, like why they recruit the way they recruit now, Robbie, it's evolved. It took a long time, but they're second to nobody in the expectations of their program and how their players are treated and how they think of themselves. It's like what comes first. But I think in order to have great success, like people have to really invest in what you do. Duke, everybody assumes that's the case. Gonzaga does that too.
Is it fair to say that most teams fly commercial to Maui if you're going there?
Absolutely. No doubt. There's always a few, but remember what I said. I didn't say 4 years ago. I said 13 years ago, they chartered from Spokane to Maui, stayed the extra day after they won it, had Thanksgiving and chartered back. But they committed to being great a long, long time ago. And that's to everybody's credit, staff, fans, administration. But when you go to Spokane and you're up there, it's they deserve all the credit in the world for becoming what they've become. And they lost tonight, but they're right there this year to win it all.
So, Arch, is Duke the number one team right now? Are they the favorites? I mean, they just beat the number one team.
I would say Duke or Purdue. You can make an argument. Purdue had Villanova and who else did they beat in that one?
North Carolina.
I mean, they beat North Carolina in a hard-fought game, and then they beat Villanova, and clearly they're right at the top. But Duke has now beaten Kentucky neutral, and they've also now beaten Gonzaga. So I mean, I think it's 1A, probably 1B with Purdue. I would put Baylor right up there as well. I mean, it's hard pressed not to think that Baylor shouldn't get a little respect right now for what they've done here early in the year. And, here's the thing about Gonzaga, that's their third top 5 game in the first 2 weeks of the season. So if you wanted to keep them there at number 1, you probably could keep them there.
They blitzed the first 2, which were two pretty good teams. How do you beat Duke, Robbie? How do you beat them? Again, they got these 2 bigs. They got length. They guard. They get after you. We've talked about this a little bit while the game was ending. What's the blueprint to trying to beat them?
Yeah, I always thought when they used to guard like this, the way you beat their pressures, you have guards that can handle that pressure and drive the basketball. And you have to have some pressure releases. Now those big dudes they got patrolling the paint make it hard. So you're gonna have to make some shots. You're gonna have to drive and kick. You have to be intelligent as a basketball player. But
I would just say this, that if you look at Virginia's style, they've had a lot of success against Duke here recently. But the thing that Duke does better than anybody in college basketball, and they'll do it for the next 20 years, in the last 20 years, is they will foul your team out and they'll go to the line 30 times. And they shot 25 free throws to Gonzaga's 11 tonight. And you have to keep their perimeter people in check and make them a jump shooting team to the best you can. I think Virginia, with the way Virginia's style is, they make it a half court game. They keep the ball in front. They trap the post. They keep it out of the paint. And Duke is at its best when, they turn you over. Like Robbie said, they're going to score every time. And the second thing is they're going to just absolutely blitz you off the dribble with their perimeter guys. And, their free throw attempts tonight, they made 15 to Gonzaga's, I think, 11 attempts. It's a big reason why they probably won the game, and Gonzaga turned the ball over 17 times. Duke is Duke when they can do those 2 things. If you make them shoot jumpers and threes and you kind of keep them out of the paint, that's easier said than done, obviously, but you got to take care of the ball as well, like Robbie said. But I'll say this. I don't see Duke losing at home this year with what's going on with Coach K's swan song.
Yeah.
And also Cameron basically has not had a game there in 2 years, a real one. And I don't think that Duke's going to lose a home game. They're going to be hard to keep off the 1 seed line coming out of this. They got a hard one, a really hard recovery. It'll be a real test to their team as they go to Columbus on Tuesday and play the Big Ten Challenge on the road. The shot will be full. And this type of energy traveling from west to east, it's a late game. I know they'll recover, but that'll be a hard game for Duke on Tuesday night at Ohio State.
Sean, anything to add on again, what they didn't touch on, how you beat Duke?
Right now, Jeff, I mean, so when you're saying Duke, they may lose a couple this year during the season, but if you're talking about winning the national championship, based on what we talked about, and I think health is always a big deal. We're 4 months away, right? Who gets hurt, how that goes. Assuming they're healthy, because of the parts they have inside, outside, the depth at guard. Robbie talked about, you don't deal with one guy off of a ball screen or penetration. They have kind of like a 3-headed monster. And yet you look at the size, most of the time they're going to have the best player on the court, the second best player on the court, probably the third and sometimes fourth best player on the court is all going to be on Duke's team. I would say this, there might be 8 teams who have enough talent, firepower on that single night in March that can beat them. I may be stretching it. I'm telling you, I think this team reminds me.
Baylor can beat them.
So put them in that category. I would say like Shane Battier, when he played at Duke during his 4 years, he never lost an ACC road game. Show you how dominant. And it was like, it's kind of that same feeling. There's a couple teams that might be able to get them, but only a couple. And I think this team's now in the category. Gonzaga is a team that can get them, but the talent you have to beat Duke this year has to be spectacular.
It's crazy because we didn't think that coming in. Like I had Duke ranked like 14th in the preseason. Now that's lower than most.
You're coming off of a year last year where their returning players, didn't have the pop. They really, to be honest with you, weren't thinking about Roach and Moore and Mark Williams probably at the end of the season last year. Most people were saying, boy, he really came on if he could be that at the beginning. But like their returning guys are really good.
Really good.
Really
and Paolo's a stud. We know that. My biggest question was point guard play with Duke. That's why I had him low, because I just didn't believe in Jeremy Roach being the guy. I still don't, but they have Wendell Moore, who's
3 guys. Up. Yeah, they have 3 guys.
Keels too. I mean, Keels initiates offense as well.
Correct. Now, how about this? Keels and Roach combined 5 for 24 tonight, and they still win.
Wendell Moore was the big difference tonight. He goes 7 of 10 from the line.
Yes.
And I would say that kind of looking at how they're projecting. I mean, he's a real difference maker for their team right now. He's got confidence. He doesn't look at all to be disappointed in how he's playing. I think you could get that taste those first couple of years in college with him that he wasn't achieving what he thought he should have been. And he's now a junior, and you can tell, like Robbie says, I mean, he fits the mold of a Duke player of old. I mean, he's an older guy, drives. I mean, he had 5. I mean, what did he have tonight? He shot 10 free throws. 10 free throws, 10 field goal attempts, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals. I mean, he's good.
Oh, I'll tell you, Arch, what you said about their backcourt. They were what, 5 for 26? Did you say?
Yeah.
5 for 24.
If they are 5 for 26 in a game like that and they win, and they don't win 58, 56, what did they score? 85?
84. Yeah.
So you score 84 points. Again, that's I think how you really feel about Duke. That clearly they have a chance to win it all, and they're the best team in the country today. Them and Gonzaga.
So if you're Mark Few, you're not upset. You're definitely not upset. I mean, you've won these 2 games big. Now, to be honest, you got their attention a little bit. Do you not, guys? Sean and Arts, like. Not that you needed it necessarily, and you also got a game out of Julian Strawther. that you can absolutely build on. This was a breakout game for a young guy that they had to have this year step up.
They had a lot of different guys play. I mean, they played 8 guys tonight. I thought Salas and Hickman started to play a little bit more of a role even tonight than they did the other day. But, right now, tonight, the difference for Gonzaga, if you said what happened, Andrew Nemhard, he had 11 assists in the game, but he also had 6 turnovers and went 2 for 7. They didn't get great point guard play from him tonight, but they got Strother and Bolton to come out of nowhere and both get 20 and 15, and not only are they going to get better, the competition level that they've seen in the first couple of weeks here, I mean, they're going to be primed to do what they normally do, which is to hit conference play right around the top 1 or 2 teams in America, and they're going to get ready to play in a really good WCC. I think they're going to be tested more in that league this year than they have in the past, but they're really good as these young guys like Salas and Hickman, Bolton's a first-year guy there. They're good.
All right, so let's finish. I didn't even want to really hit on this, but everybody will want to know, Paolo or Chet. And again, I know it's early in the season, but I also know that sometimes you can tell early in the season who's number one when you see these guys enough. And these guys are so different. That's the incredible part of this. And I think it's one or the other. To me, Jabari Smith is terrific at Auburn, and I think he's probably number 3 for me. But these guys are 1 and 2. Robbie, I'll start with you. Who you taking? Gun to your head today. Who you taking?
I think I'd go Holmgren still. I just think his upside is insane. I mean, this dude looks like he bench presses like 70 pounds, and he's so productive, So I'd go with that because I think he's just going to get so much better over the next 3 or 4 years.
Robbie, that's one way of looking at it. And then, it all depends on how beauty is in the eye of the beholder so many times with this. Like Chet, you could flip it on you and say, yep, you're right. But that's part of what makes Paolo so good. Imagine when Chet Holmgren grows into his body and is 20 pounds heavier. He has a 7'6" wingspan. He already can shoot the 3. He's proven that he's a shot blocker. Like, do you also look at it the other way through, what they don't have? Because in Paolo's case, no doubt he has a ready-made body. But, I think the one thing, let's give both guys credit. I don't think it's a sure thing either way. It's a tough decision. I'm sure that
not a wrong answer, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe it'll play itself out more over the next 4 or 5 months. But both guys are like generational type of players. For sure. They're both really good, but I watched Auburn actually quite a bit in that tournament, and I'll tell you, I think Jabari Smith in like 3 or 4 years, I think he's an NBA All-Star. I mean, that dude, you talk about freakish talent and skill. He's got just as much as those two, but I think, if you look at those guys, who's having success, who plays like them early, I think Paulo kind of looks like a Julius Randle type of a guy early in his career. Chet, I think a lot of people, Sean, you would probably be able to compare him, but Mobley, who just left USC a year ago, a lot of people are kind of saying those two guys are on the same kind of path. I'm not sure the eye test, what I think Evan Mobley probably has a wider frame than Chet. Chet's pretty narrow, but maybe not, Arch. I think Chet's kind of like Evan Mobley, but can shoot. One thing that I was looking at Jabari Smith earlier, right now he's shooting 43% from 3.
He's serious.
He's almost 50% from the field, and he's 84% from the line. And, we're just crossing Thanksgiving. Usually those numbers take a little bit to settle for, no matter how talented you are, especially as a freshman. And keep this in mind, to Paulo, Chet, and Jabari's credit, imagine those guys' senior year of high school. What did they do? What did they not do? There's no people. I mean, you think about where they're at. I think that's why when you talk about generational talent, especially the first 2 guys, it's not going to be an easy decision. And I think you bringing up Jabari Smith is right, Jeff. His shooting at that size, to be that efficient, that young in his career, usually those numbers hold true.
The only thing I worry about with Chet is his frame. That's it. Other than
There's
that,
got to be, I don't care what anybody says, there has to be an adjustment for him from a size perspective and strength when you hit the NBA. Robbie, I mean, you run around out there with those guys. It just, now I will also tell you this, that Kevin Durant's a skinny guy too. He doesn't have any problems.
He's very functionally strong though. I mean,
yeah.
When he was in Texas, he was probably not like that, but
Robbie did have a game where he says he held KD down.
I've never said that. I've literally never said that in my life. I was praying that he didn't murder me. We played 1-on-1 for 3 minutes at the Target Center in front of a freaking capacity crowd.
But it's kind of like Chet has that same body. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make sense, but he's just so skilled. And I don't know, is Chet Porzingis?
He's tougher. He's way tougher, and he's a better shot blocker. Like I don't think he's as good a shooter yet, but I think he's got more shit to him. That's the one thing with Chet. You see it already. Like even tonight, he's fighting, he's battling. I never really saw that out of Porzingis. Now, again, we also didn't see Porzingis when he should have been a freshman in college as much. I mean, he was good with the Knicks, but I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one for me. It is. It's a tough. I don't know. Again, Rob made his pick with Chet, Arch, and Sean. Neither one of you is it that difficult, or would you go with one guy?
I mean, I guess my point would be, it's what do you need as a franchise? You're probably going to draft, what you need a little bit, but you're probably not going to go wrong with drafting any of them. But I'll stick to this. I think that Paulo physically will be more ready to play in the NBA from day one. I think the best of the three is going to be Jabari Smith from Auburn.
Wow. That's strong. And again,
well, I give all three guys credit. They went to great programs and they're all being coached hard, and like they're not getting baby. Sure. There's none of that stuff going on with any of the three.
For sure. Yeah, I don't know about that last deal on Jabari Smith. I would tell you this, that I'll pass, and I'll say that I'm undecided between Chet and Paulo. I mean that in a positive way for both. I think it'll play itself out more in the next 3 or 4 months than it is right at this moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, again, we love to make these knee-jerk decisions after a huge game like this. And if you do that, you're probably going with Paulo because of his first half. He was that electric and made threes. And, again, I've compared him to Chris Webber. I feel like he's got a similar game to Chris Webber when he first came in, but he's even bigger and stronger. All right, let's move on. There's several ways we can go with this. I'm going to go to Baylor because of what Arch said earlier. And what Arch said earlier was that he felt like Baylor was one of a half dozen teams that could probably compete and maybe beat Duke or anybody in the country. And that, to me, think about that. If we had said that, last April 15th, after Baylor wins, they're going to lose Davion Mitchell. Jared Butler's gone. Obviously, Mark Vidal and Maceo Teague. That's 4 starters from a national title team in Waco at Baylor. And you're saying this, Arch. How ridiculous is it that we've got Baylor in that equation, and what Scott Drew has done is nothing short of remarkable.
No, that's incredible. I mean, you lose the 3 perimeter players in Teague, Butler, and Mitchell. They're all legit. I mean, that the 3-headed monster, but they replaced him. I mean, LJ Cryer, and then you have Flagler, and now you have James Akinjo in the mix. And they're probably going to have to get their chemistry down. They won't be as in sync as those 3 guys were last year. But I will tell you this, the whole key to Baylor's deal is a little bit like I think what Sean was talking about. They got Thamba in there, and then they got his backup guy, the high end Muchachua. That's at the 5. Serious talent and athleticism. And then they have the X factor in Mayer, who's the skilled 4. He's kind of like the jack of all trades. And then these 2 freshmen that they got are as good as these other guys that we're talking about. Kendall Brown, and then Satrin. Jeremy Soccer.
Sohan. Yeah, Sohan.
Those two freshmen are as high level talent wise, but they have the defense. They have the 5 position covered. They have a 3-headed monster at the guard who can all handle it. And they, what they did in that second half, I thought today in the championship against Michigan State, they just wore them down, and they hit you on the glass. They can beat you a number of ways.
Yeah.
They're probably not as in sync as they were a year ago, but they have some guys that played in that national championship game, man. And when you win on that stage, it's hard to duplicate that type of winning when you have some guys returning.
They got balance. They got a lot of dudes on that team.
Yeah.
Matthew Myers stepped up a little bit, but he doesn't need to be the guy. I think a lot of people thought he needed to be the guy on this team. And now Flagler, transfer from Presbyterian. LJ Cryer's been great this year. As you said, those 2 bigs, you don't need to run anything for them. Just go rebound, run the court, block shots, finish. But I think the key for this team, Sean, is a guy that you know well, James Akinjo, transferred there, played for you in Arizona, and kind of has a reputation that may not be justified, right?
Yeah, let me clear that up just from my perspective, because just listening to everybody, and it's not one person, I think it's just kind of everybody's curious to see how James will do at Baylor. James Akinjo 1 year ago led the Pac-12 in assists. He was a first-team All-Pac-12 player, and he shot for the entire season 41% from 3. Like, think about what I said. When's the last point guard that you called selfish, Robbie, that led the Big Ten in assists?
I haven't.
And here's the thing. If you look at what he's done so far at Baylor, there's a real chance for him to lead the Big 12 in assists. He's the MVP of the tournament that just happened in the Battle of Atlantis. And in fairness to everybody, he just got to Baylor. It's going to take a little bit of time. But a year ago with us at Arizona, we had a younger group. You've seen the progression. A lot of those younger players are a year older. But during the months of November and December, and even our conference season when it began, we asked a lot more of James, right? If he would have came back to Arizona, he wouldn't have had to do as much, maybe scoring, as he did a year ago. At Baylor, clearly he doesn't have to do as much, but I think he's adapting pretty darn well, But when you lead a conference like the Pac-12 in assists, you're a first-team All-Pac-12 player. Trust me, there's not a coach in the Pac-12 that isn't happy that he's no longer there. And I think if you talk to Scott Drew, which I have, he's thrilled with James's progress, and he's only going to get more comfortable, in fairness to him, because he did just get there. But just watching him fit in, and the other part I just want to say is I coached against Scott Drew 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago, not last year when they won it, but I think it's really remarkable just to watch how he's changed as a coach and grown. Like the way his teams are known today defensively, you almost fear his teams defensively. For a long period of time, not that they didn't play defense. I mean, he was an excellent coach and won. They mixed in a lot of 2-3 zone.
The amoeba. They
Yeah,
go
they
with the
look-
amoeba shit. We didn't know what they were in.
Yeah, they didn't always, play man. Some of his teams weren't as good defensively, but he has created an identity here, coupled with the talent, coupled with some other things. And I believe that there's nobody in our game, college basketball, that is a better coach, not recruiter, not developer and all that. I'm talking about just running a program, coaching, than Scott Drew. I mean, not that he needed to win this tournament, but what else does he really have to do to be put in the category of some of the guys that come to mind when you think of who the best coaches in college basketball? Like, you got to say his name right off the top.
I think he said it after the game, after they won the championship. In Power 5 basketball, I want to say in the last 2 years, they're the winningest program in college basketball. And if you go 3 years, I think they're tied with Virginia.
Yeah.
As the winningest program in Power 5 basketball over a 3-year.
And let me say this, Arch, all due respect to you two Big Ten guys. Thank God Goodman's on here with me. The Big 12, he's doing it in.
I am not a Big
Boy
Ten guy.
basketball. Big 12, that is America's premier conference. And I'm telling you, you said the last 3 years, for
Yes.
him to win and be able to say that, I mean, you got to give him unbelievable respect. I think it talks a lot about their talent. It talks a lot about it. I know their staff's been together for the last 5 years. I think he's got a great staff, but he's also been in the Big 12. I think Bill Self and him have been in the Big 12. They're approaching 20 years, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think they're
amazing.
both around 18 or 19.
That's hard to do.
Robbie knows Scott dating back from when Scott, recruited him. And it's crazy to see the progression of Scott Drew, not only as a coach, but, honestly, let's face it, when he started winning early at Baylor, what were the two things being said about him within the industry? Number one was he's cheating his ass off. That's the only way he's getting the players. Number two was he can't coach. The only reason he's winning is because he has Perry Jones and Quincy Miller and Isaiah Austin, these, top 5 recruits in the country. Now it's completely changed, Rob, to whereas it's now like these guys are saying, like, hey, give him his due.
He's
Not only coach.
He's 61-6 since 2020.
Oh, that's great. This is kind of piggyback off of what Sean said, but he hasn't just changed defensively. Even like when we played in the NCAA tournament, my freshman year, it was all about run and gun, first to 90 wins, and that's how they played. And you're right, they did it with McDonald's All-Americans. Now he's kind of fluctuated to where for a while he wasn't getting that. Now he's back to recruiting at a high level. He's changed so much. It's really remarkable. But at the end of the day, he is a phenomenal head coach. Their culture is what sets them apart because they go in there, they guard their ass off, they play hard every possession. And honestly, they had guys on the bench that aren't guys that are normally coming off the bench at programs like that. I mean, Flagler, stud. Matt Meyer might be the most talented dude on the team even last year. I mean, I'm not sure he loves basketball. I'm not sure he likes basketball at times, but he is he's 6'9", he's going up and he's cocking it back. He is very physically gifted. And there's a lot of guys. You mentioned Cryer, waited his turn. Now he's playing. You bring in a transfer like James Akinjo. You have a high-level recruiting class. I mean, it makes so much sense why they're winning. There's just too many reasons why they're so good.
Their physicality on the shot, it reminded me of Cincinnati when Huggins was there and really in his prime. Like
Dayton
you had 1 or 2 choices. Like if you had to play him, you either had to and Skip Prosser would talk about part of Xavier's rise to prominence and their continued success is the motivating factor of having Cincinnati across the city that was not only thriving, but could physically beat you up. So, you had to recruit to that. You had to talk about that. You had to develop your own toughness. And I think like Baylor is the measuring stick of that in a lot of ways, especially the last 3 years. I mean, shot went up. Mark Feidel. I mean, he was just a nightmare.
Yep.
And that's all part of coaching. It's not just a set play or how many points your team scores, but it's kind of that identity. I think in football, it's like how it feels when they tackle you. What both lines feel like, the offensive line and the defensive line. There's a cumulative effect when you play them that feels different. When you play Baylor, their defense, their physicality, rebounding, it really jumps out. It's different. And but I tell you what, the respect of Scott Drew, to me, he's one of the best in the game, and I think he'll be in a Hall of Fame coach.
Their team right now almost mirrors a little bit last year, but they're 4th on offense, 5th on defense. They're top 5 in forcing turnovers, and they're top 10 in offensive rebounding. And
Jeff, I want to use. I'm sorry, Arch. I want to use this deal. I want to bring one thing up. Why is Bob Huggins not in the Hall of Fame? Can I just say this one thing about it? Let's talk about where he started. Wins. Walsh College. Anybody been there?
Never been to Walsh.
Akron.
Been to Akron.
Been there.
UC Cincinnati, and keep in mind when he was there. Kansas State for a brief minute, in West Virginia. And it's like you look at what he's done and the wins he's had. It's just.
Well, I think Jay Wright. The problem, Sean, is Jay Wright just won. Here's the issue. In my opinion, I don't know if any active coaches should be in the Hall of Fame. I feel like probably you should wait till guys retire, and even if you want to have a shorter window, but whatever, that's a different conversation. But Jay Wright just passed them by because he won 2 national titles. So he got in ahead of them. He jumped them.
Is Billy in? Jeff, is Billy in yet?
Billy's in. Yeah, Billy was in. Yep.
Is he?
Billy's in the Naismith Hall of Fame?
Pretty sure.
No, yeah, I think he
I think
is.
he's in yet.
Donovan.
Oh,
Yeah,
Billy
I
Hummel.
think so. Yeah.
I
think so.
thought there was something like a rule, like you had to be 20 years in and something 5 out, but I don't think Billy's in.
You don't think Billy's in?
I don't think
Maybe
he's
he's
in the
not.
Naismith Hall of Fame.
Maybe
No.
he's not. I don't remember. All right. Let's move on to something probably not as positive, and that is the Memphis Tigers right now. And Penny Hardaway in his 4th year. Before the season, he gets Amani Bates, he gets Jalen Duren, 2 top kids, high school kids, reclassify, puts him with a really good, returning a bunch of transfers, Landers Nolly, DeAndre Williams, Lester Quinones is back, and they get blitzed tonight. I mean, they got run off the court in Brooklyn by an Iowa State team that honestly most people had either last or maybe ahead of Kansas State in the Big 12 this year. And give Iowa State credit, and TJ Otzelberger has done one hell of a job. I've said this fits him. UNLV did not fit TJ Otzelberger. Iowa State fits him, but how much of this is Iowa State beating a Memphis team that we ranked in the top 10? They're just not that good. They don't have a point guard. That's my big issue with Memphis is I don't care if you have Larry Brown, John Wooden, and whoever else on the bench coaching a team. You guys know this, Arch. I'm not gonna say you didn't have a point guard, but Rob Finney wasn't maybe quite the level that you had hoped he'd be. And I'm not asking you to hammer him at all, but you need a high level point guard to be able to win, and be able to go deep in the tournament and win your league.
Yeah, I mean, I think guard play in general is it's paramount. You got to have it, especially with the way that Memphis, their style is set up. They have a feast or famine style of play, but I think in their defense, real competition over the weekend, beating a good Virginia Tech team, and then they lost to a really, 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 really hard playing, confident Iowa State team. I mean, let's not take that away. I mean, those guys have played their butts off in both of those games. But the thing with Memphis is this: they're young, they're super talented, and they're going to have to just, at the end of the day, they're going to have to just tidy some things up. But they're 350 in the country in turnover rate on offense. There's only 351 teams.
Yeah.
So, that's not going to get it done. That's got to come down. I think part of that is they're playing a breakneck speed. They have a lot of young guys out there, and they have to calm that down a little bit. And I think once they do that, which they'll have to if they're going to try and make a run. But, defensively, how they're playing with the full court, the switching, the chin on shoulder, the game is going to get crazy with the way that they play. And, if they turn you over, they're going to be able to convert. If they don't turn you over against good teams, if they can't do it, they're going to be in a half court game, and that's not going to be in their favor. But the whole deal with Memphis is obviously getting calmed down in terms of the turnover offensively. They have the troops, and they got a lot of talent.
22 turnovers tonight, Rob. 22. And again, Alex Lomax, a really good backup point guard for a team that maybe could contend or go to Sweet 16. Amani Bates. Listen, when Penny told me in the summer after he got Amani Bates, and he said to me that would probably be their first option at the point, that's when I said, all right, they're in trouble, because Amani Bates is a scorer. He's not a point guard. He impressed me over the summer with his passing and court vision. It was better than I had seen it 2 years ago, but he's a flat out scorer. And he's also really young, and it's going to take him time. I hope he stays another year in college, because I think his second year in college, he could be a lot of what people thought he'd be.
I mean, this is what we saw from Memphis last year too. Remember we heard about the Lion offense and whatever that was? Like, well, they run the Lion offense or what they ran tonight. It's been horrible. You know, they get in the half court, they can't score. Archie talked about their defense. They're going to pressure you. They're going to turn you over. I have such concerns about Memphis scoring the ball against anyone that's going to competently handle their pressure. They can't score. It is
like
what
Houston. Like Houston.
But Robbie, here's what I would say though, just kind of looking at them. Number one, keep in mind, obviously, not only do they have an influx of new players, but they're really, really young, right? And they're on a neutral court in New York for the first time. Like the one thing that you say, let's say if Purdue basketball is number 3 in America today, because now games have been played on defense, they're third. Going into the game, I think they were first. Like that shows you like there's a reason. There's some talent there that in some teams' best attempt, they couldn't sniff third. They're just not talented enough. What Arch said, and Arch, I'll correct you on one thing. There are more teams in college basketball because in teams stealing the ball against Memphis, they're 356th.
Oh, so there's 6 more than I thought.
So let's flip it. If you're third on defense and you're 350th in turnovers and 356 in people stealing the ball, live ball turnovers, like I think that's something you can fix if you just don't play as fast. Right. You know, I think I'm going to give Larry Brown Penny enough credit where in the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, that's something that can really be correctable. But what they have, 90% of the country can't even sniff, and that is they're so talented, quickness-wise, depth-wise, athleticism, size. And when you can be a top 5 defensive team, it's just a matter of the question, how much better can they get at taking care of the ball? Because like you said, they couldn't score, Robbie. I would worry more about that if I saw, you know, they're turning it over, maybe they're 50th. Then I would be like, you're right. But part of you can't score if you don't shoot, you know? And by the way,
think about this though, last year, 308. Year prior to that, 338. This is not like a new thing for their team. So
meaning turnovers?
Yes.
Right. I'm going to give one guy enough credit, and I don't want to overstep my bounds because I know Penny's the coach. There is no way Larry Brown is going to sit there next to Penny and let that happen for the 3rd year in a row. That's a gentleman's bet right there, Robbie.
I like
if we check back here in early March, Memphis still may turn it over, but they'll be considerably better. And only thing I'd say is
what's our number? 275?
We'll have to I tell you what, I'm going to say
where are we looking at?
How much better? That's right.
They'll get it in the low 200s. They'll get it to that point. But here's the thing. Think about this. Do you know how hard it is to be good on defense when teams, you're 356 and teams stealing the ball?
The ball. Yeah, that's hard.
I'm going to tell you, Memphis is going to have a great year. And when you get to March, they're going to have this fixed as much as they've had the last 3 or 4 years. And if they do, look out. They just have ingredients that most of college basketball don't have. And right now you see it on defense. You'll start seeing it more on offense.
Well, the one thing is you can't, I say it again, they went to Brooklyn, it's neutral. Amoni Bates and Jalen Duren and those guys, like last year Amoni was a junior in high school. And Jalen Duren, you know, although at Mount Ver, maybe a little bit different, but they haven't even played a college road game yet. I mean, they're going to go through some of these ups and downs here early on. But I think once they kind of get into conference play, especially at home, they're going to be really tough to deal with in Memphis, you know, with the way that they play. But they got some, they got to get the turnovers down.
All right. We can't finish the show without talking about the biggest upset of the day. And that was Kansas losing to a Dayton team that has 12 freshmen on it.
How's that possible?
Because you can have like 18 scholarships.
How do you have 12 freshmen?
And well, they probably have 15 or 16 scholarship guys. I don't know, but listen. All I know is Kansas was up, I think 15 with about a minute and a half left in the first half. Dayton comes out 9-0 run coming out of the break, and then they put pressure on Kansas, and then it's like playing with house money. to some degree. But at the end, I was just shocked. The biggest shock for me was they went to David McCormick on the final play of the game for Kansas. And he has he's been awful.
Jeff, you just said the magic number was 12 freshmen. I've watched Dayton quite a bit here early in the year. They have the thinnest front line in college basketball. They're all young. David McCormick is a fifth-year senior. And here's the thing. One of the reasons, you can say one of the reasons, whatever, David McCormick didn't play well today, but I mean, you got to be able to throw the ball inside, and he's got to be able to get some work done against that front line, because what Dayton has done coming into the tournament, I mean, you know, they hadn't played well. They're finding themselves. They're a completely new team. So, but I understand exactly why. But he didn't get it done like he normally did. But believe me, there's a few coaches, if you just go through feast week and you say, well, I wonder how many of those guys had an enjoyable Thanksgiving night or Friday night or Wednesday night. We were talking about it the other night, like these ballrooms, what they look like. Like, I'm just going to say this, the Jayhawks have a long day tomorrow. And I'm sure the Iona Gales are probably right next to them, having a long day tomorrow. I know Kelvin Sampson's crew had a hard night as they rolled in. I mean, you just know there's a few teams that are going to kind of come back here. And Kansas is going to come back because they took the foot off the pedal coming out of halftime, and they allowed Dayton way too many easy opportunities to get the momentum. And no one understands this but me. But when you're in an exempt event and Dayton is in the event, you have no idea what that place feels like with their crowd.
It's awesome.
They get invited for the next 40 years to every event known to mankind because they bring the entire city down there. But I'm just telling you, if you ask the Kansas players or Bill Self, and Kansas has a great crowd, they got stunned in there, man. The place went absolutely crazy. It was like playing a home game. I've seen it 1,000 times. When you go into those events and Dayton's in the event, they're really hard to deal with because of their crowd. And you could just feel it on TV in there. You could see it. I mean, like when they got a little momentum going and Kansas was shook there for a minute. I mean, I think he took back-to-back timeouts early in the second half and it got away from them. But defensively, they weren't very good in the second half, and that's part of the problem.
Dayton fans are amazing. You're so right. And you know what makes them amazing is it's not like they're always top five.
Listen,
I mean,
they lost three
home
bye games coming to Florida, and they literally have people flying in for the championship. People that didn't come to today's game are coming on Sunday. They're flying down there.
Hey, look, I mean, that's the advantage of if you're the coach about Dayton. I mean, you get to this time, if you don't see the sun for 47 to 60 days in a row, I mean, at some point you're like, where's that exempt event? Oh, Florida? Sign me up. I mean, that's the advantage.
Paradise.
That's the advantage. I mean, Robbie knows a little bit about that as well.
It's paradise.
Robbie doesn't see the sun all winter. West Lafayette to Chicago, forget about
Jeff,
it.
here's the one thing. Jalen Wilson, who I know is a very talented player, it's so difficult when a very talented player goes down, whether it's an off the court situation or an injury. But I think sometimes when they first come back, it's awkward for everybody. If you look at him, like who he'll be a month from now or 2 months from now, once he settles in, far cry from the player that you've watched the last 2 days. I know he struggled today, but he's a real big piece to Kansas's prominence. And, you know, I think early on, like that second half, and just like you didn't even know he was on their team. Well, that's kind of like the price everyone pays when, you know, something like that happens. You just don't snap your fingers and everything's back. So I think part of them fixing themselves moving forward will have him, you know, becoming the player that he clearly is.
Rob, you worried about Kansas? I mean, obviously, they don't really have an alpha dog. They bring in a point guard in Remy Martin that Bill Self's still trying to reprogram to some degree. You know, we had him in that top 3 or 4. Now, I think, listen, to me, there's probably a top 3 right now. And I think it would still be Duke, Gonzaga, Purdue. I think those are your 3.
Look,
in a different tier.
if you want to talk about Kansas and watch this number grow, because it's going to have to grow for them to do what they normally do. David McCormick is shooting 41% from 2 at the 5 for Kansas. And I just go back the last 20 years of Bill Self, and his bigs are getting the easiest 2-point baskets that you're ever going to get on the floor. And if your center's playing 25 or 30 and he is 6'9" or 10, and he's shooting 41% from two, he's not getting the job done for Kansas right now. So I would suspect this because he's been there for a long time. He's going to reemerge, and they're going to get a better play out of him than Kansas has a chance to be.
He did this last year. McCormick was
awful
for the first month of the season, and then all of a sudden, Big 12 play comes around, and he's back to being a stud. I wouldn't say I'm worried about him because I think Coach Self is such a good coach. I think what Sean just said about Jalen Wilson kind of getting back is certainly a very good point. The point guard stuff worries you. Can Remy Martin be a winning point guard at a place like Kansas? I think that's the big question. But I do believe that David McCormick will play much better because I've seen it, and I've seen him start like this before and then figure it out.
Hey,
That's
Dayton.
why I go back to Baylor and Akinjo. Like, if you want to have the narrative of worrying how Remy Martin, first of all, Remy Martin was, I mean, the one thing that I think you have to give credit, Robbie, to him about is in the role that he had at Arizona State, playing wild sometimes himself, getting a lot of freedom, scoring, shooting a lot. He did go to 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments. However, his style playing at Kansas with what he's trying to accomplish for a different coach, he has to kind of flip his style somewhat. James, like you were in Vegas, James played with about 3 pros a year earlier at Arizona. They were younger.
Yep.
Like it's not that he just, and although his usage rate was higher, I don't think he has to adjust nearly as much. But Remy Martin, and I think I mentioned it last time, he can drive both coaches crazy, his own coach and the other coach. And I say that with like a lot of respect, because the one thing about him, the bigger the moment, or right when you're ready to doubt him, he'll have a big moment in a game, or he'll have a big game. He just kind of, he's a fearless competitor. And I think that's a big reason why he went to Kansas, because he beat them twice when he played at Arizona State. And as time moves on and he gets some tough love, I think he'll settle in, and I think he's plenty good enough. And no doubt, I think Kansas is one of those teams that when you get to March, they clearly can make a deep run. Bill Self, his ability to score on offense is unlike anything that I have seen. I mean, he takes these teams, and when you keep watching them, they get to the point where it's like, wow, they score easily, and doesn't always have that talent that we watched earlier tonight with Gonzaga and Duke. You know, he's had great players, but recently not nearly as talented as those 2 teams.
All right. Well, listen, appreciate all you guys joining us. I know, happy Thanksgiving to all you. Sean, you told me, I think this was your first Thanksgiving at home in 38 years or something, some crazy number like that. So
Yeah,
I'm glad we were able to keep you busy at least, and give you, a night of watching ball and talking about it. And Arch, happy Thanksgiving, and Rob, appreciate it. And you're back tomorrow night with Fana and Kevin Sweeney after dark tomorrow night. So Robbie Hummel cannot get enough of it, and he's trying to make sure he earns his paycheck.
Hey, Jeff and Robbie, I'm not going to let you 2 guys off the hook. I'm going to make you stay on here for a couple more minutes, just 2 minutes. You can't ignore the Pac-12 like you just tried to. You have to at least act as if I'm not allowing that to happen. It's my calling card. And I have more time on my hands. I'm going to take one for my fellow coaches and comrades out here. I'm telling you right now, USC, don't sleep on them. More minutes, just don't sleep on their talent and their ability. They were under the radar last year, and they almost got to the Final Four. They're off to a great start. They return their length and size, their experience. They have a very, very good team. I believe in USC. Arizona's harder for me to talk about because I was the coach, but Robbie, I would just ask you, based on the talent level, and just, I think Tommy Lloyd's doing a really good job. Like, I think Arizona is going to be a tournament team. Do you feel that way? I'm biased.
No, they asked me during the Michigan game what I thought their sitting was. I think it's second weekend. That size is a problem to deal with. The athleticism is a problem. The skill is there. I mean, the front court is, Matherin, stud, the big fella from
Coloco.
Yes. Well, not him. Coloco has gotten so much.
Tabellas. Yeah.
Tubelis, phenomenal. The question for me is Kirk Creason. I know his swagger is that he feels like he's a top elite point guard in that league. We'll see. He's got to play well. But I love their team. I think they are.
I'll say this about the Pac-12. Oregon is going to have to fix some of their stuff for the league to really be deep, and I don't know, looking at UCLA and USC and Arizona off to good starts, Washington State and Utah, underrated teams. They're both off to good starts, but the Pac-12 needs Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon State's bad. Oregon State's bad this year. Arizona State's been bad. Cal's been bad. Washington's been bad. Stanford's been bad. Oregon's been bad. If Oregon doesn't come back, then it's a four-bid league, Sean. You realize you're no longer Sean. You're no longer.
Sean, this is the man you can talk to, not me, not Archie. It's got Goodman's the Pac-12.
So Jeff, look. Here's all I'm going to tell you. Okay, so here's I'm gonna make a couple great points. I'm going to revisit points in March. You cannot judge UCLA right now without Cody Riley.
Fair.
I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
He's underrated. His number one, his experience, his ability to score around the rim. Like you talk about Kansas, like scoring around the rim. Yeah. Cody Riley is a problem. There are some games UCLA will win this year because of his individual performance on offense. He adds a different dimension and element to their team. Number two, Peyton Watson is just entering the fray. Who he'll be in February is far different from who he is today. I think Mick's a heck of a coach. They have a lot of guys now. Johnny Juzang, Jaime, Tiger. Like they're a team that don't sleep on them because Gonzaga beat them the way they did. They're also the same team that beat Villanova without Cody Riley. Okay? Sure. Without Cody Riley for the Big East people there. Keep that in mind. He didn't play in that game. So I get your point on the bottom, but USC, UCLA, and Arizona. And then I'm going to say this, that don't sleep on Oregon, although they did not look right in Maui. You want to know how good Chris Duarte is? I mean, that says it too. Him and Peyton Pritchard the last 3 or 4 years with them on their team, I think they won so many games by themselves. But Dana will get it going. And then I'll tell you the other team that has two teams that I think are very well coached. Don't sleep on them. Washington State with Kyle Smith and Utah with Craig Smith. Yeah. I think in both cases, I'm not saying they're going to be in the tournament, but those aren't like easy trips or games right now. They're both undefeated, and I think they're both building their programs into being a power. But you got to at least acknowledge them. I mean, come on now. I mean, Jesus God.
I love how you're not in the league anymore and you're still defending him. Like
you were ignored for 12 straight years, and Robbie Hummel, guys like Robbie Hummel aren't giving you any credit, and you're like, wait a second, we're pretty good too. And you guys drink that Big Ten water. I'm tired of that Big Ten water. You have to spread the love. I watched Michigan come to Vegas and play Arizona, and I felt it. I saw it. And, it's like, I'm going to tell you that there's some good basketball out here in the West this year. I mean, San Diego State is very good. Arch mentioned the WCC being as good as it's ever been. Gonzaga obviously being out here. I think there's some teams that when you get into March Madness can advance.
I think the WCC and the Mountain West, I don't know about the Mountain West, but WCC is going to get as many teams as the Pac-12 in the tournament.
Colorado State.
Well, Colorado State, San Diego State, Boise State, Nevada just fixed their deal real quick with the dismissal, and they got cooking the last couple of days. They're going to be good. Fresno State, undefeated right now, and they have a pro inside. WCC's got San Francisco undefeated. Santa Clara was undefeated until Frantic, their good big guy, he got mono, so he's out for a couple of weeks, but the Pac-12, they may not get as many as those two leagues.
They'll probably get 4. I mean, they'll probably get 4 at this point. I mean, USC beat San Diego State tonight, which was a big one for the league. But again, you've got UCLA, Arizona. Usually you have Oregon that's a lock at this point. Now,
Oregon's going to really have to rally.
Right. They got some work to do.
Robbie and Jeff, as official members of the media,
I'm honored you said that about
is it fair to say this? That on December 1st, okay, let's go one more week, that you would be able to lock in 25 at-large teams by right now, what they've already done or whatever. Like, you know, like sometimes the narrative as a coach, it drives me crazy because it's so opposite. I heard it a little bit the last couple of days. It's only November. It might only be November, like if you're Memphis and they have to fix their turnover problem. I think we all understand that. But like tonight, the winner of the Virginia Tech Xavier game,
that
has unreal meaning.
Yes.
And it was played quietly in Brooklyn in November. Like
You're
you
right.
only get so many at-large opportunities. And if you're coming from a conference that hasn't performed well in November, December, or you yourself, you know, that's what I worry about Oregon. They had to play Chaminade and Maui. They right now, they're starting to get games under the belt. They have no wins.
Right.
So it's like you're almost at a point here in a couple of weeks where you have to win your conference tournament. And no one likes to talk like that.
If you're Oregon, Sean, you have Arizona and UCLA. And what else? Like Washington State may not have anything on its resume at that point. Utah may not have enough. Those aren't resume wins.
I will say this: Oregon has one more opportunity in the non-conference versus Baylor. They have one more game.
It's a huge one.
From a non-conference perspective that's going to matter, and I believe it's at their place. It's a home game, but that's they've lost to BYU, St. Mary's, and Houston, and they only have one more really marquee game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for your Pac-12.
I'm not going to let you guys. I'm not going to let you guys do what has been done. No, we're going to change that.
Next time, we're going to get you some Pac-12 pom-poms, and you can just put them up and start swinging them around. All right.
Yeah. Damon Stoudemire, Sean Elliott, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson. Do you want me to keep going?
No, listen.
Robbie and Arch can't even. I mean, right there, like we can go toe.
Why do you keep saying me? I don't have anything to do with any of those guys. I don't.
Arch.
I'm not associated with anybody.
Fair.
There you have it. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. Field of 68's After Dark. And if you want to catch more of Robbie Hummel tomorrow night with John Fana and Kevin Sweeney, we'll see you tomorrow.